Well, um, okay, I know I'm so sorry we're late. I'm really, really sorry we're late. And um, I've been I've been thinking about um how to do this episode. I have a book that I think will help me with it, and I'm really hoping you guys can help me, because um I've been feeling really bad, and um I'm just kidding. Welcome to the Mosaic Ark. Mm, Um, I'm not sure I can do this tonight. Are you going to be able to take this? Can you help like guide them?
What's happened?
I you know I it's like being in high school again, and you look at people, and it's hard to keep it's really hard to like keep eye contact, and I I don't want to play with my hair too much because it'll like mess it up and stuff, but can't you help me? Please? She's not helping me. What is I gonna do? I'm gonna like die here if I have to stay low status. Come on, woman, pull me out of this.
I'm judging you
Okay,
in
judge.
I'm judging you in Transylvania.
You're judging me. How dare you judge me? Okay, so it's interesting. Can you? I don't know if you were watching me. It's like watch the chat. Mel says she's an autist. She can't lead anymore. Ha! Right? No, I'm an autist. I've studied the rules. So everything I was doing was obviously on purpose, although that was pretty unpleasant for me because I don't want to play low status on camera. I mean, it's like nothing. I was thinking it's like that's the one thing my internet enemies are gonna clip and share and go viral with. It's like me being all cringy and touchy facey, and could you tell how I did it?
Yes, but you've also made me feel highly uncomfortable. So
how did I make you feel uncomfortable? I was the one playing low status. Why did that make you feel uncomfortable? How interesting.
Asking me to lead you.
How? See, this is so. It's like forcing
I need
you.
a sedative.
No, but think about it. Think about it. What does everybody in the universe? I gotta pull out of this. It's hard to come back up. What does everybody in the universe think they want?
Power.
Power. What does Lucifer want when he's looking at God, right? What does the Gamma want when he's looking at that Alpha and saying, I could do better?
Prestige.
Prestige, yes.
Yeah.
I
had no heads up.
I flung it
I
right
wasn't
at you,
prepared
and
for
you
that.
didn't want it. You're throwing it back at me, saying, "Please take charge. Please be in control.
Yes.
Please take care of me." High status is actually huge responsibility, you know. You felt it,
I
didn't
know,
you?
and I don't want the
No, explain to the people what you
responsibility.
just went through watching me go low. This is a good place to start.
Well,
You know, we have 10 people. That's like even more than we've ever had right now. That one of those is me. 9. This is the biggest audience we've ever had in the first 3 minutes.
And they choose now to join.
They choose now to join.
The moment where I'm thrust into cold terror and an absolute state of panic because I have no idea what to do. Welcome, everybody.
Okay, now I will take command again for you and say, tell the people.
Put me out of my misery.
No, I got to keep putting you back in your misery because you chose most of the pictures for tonight. Tell the people, if you can.
Again.
Yes, you are. Tell the people what you felt like when you thought I was not going to take control of this.
Panic.
But why? You want to be in control? So the thing is, I've actually okay, but no, this does not help me because I need to like learn to trade status with you better. That it's this is super interesting. You've got to take instruction from me, right?
Okay.
I will be in control of your being able to speak. That I've been watching our videos because Mel does such a brilliant job of doing clips and stuff, and it bothers me that I can just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and I worry that I don't pause enough for you to come in.
No, but I can jump in anytime.
So you feel comfortable?
I like listening to you. I feel comfortable. It's like when you read, and then I go into that drug lull where, you know, I'm kind of sedated, and I think, it's relaxing. Very, yeah. So so perhaps this is why, because usually I start streaming with you and I become very relaxed. Then you just ask me to lead the stream and suddenly I have to muster a different energetic kind of vibe in order to do it. But I'm not accustomed to being in charge of this.
Right, but it's not, so people watch it, right? It's everybody's watching anybody's stream and they're always like, I could be doing that better, right? I could be taking charge of this. I could be leading that discussion, and you know, would you? I mean, not you personally, but the obviously I've spent decades teaching people how to teach. And this is okay, on the one hand, I'm learning my inner autist is actually more of my outer autist than I'd appreciated, but and looking back over things that I actually had to learn. And one thing that I did do very consciously when I was learning to teach was think about the role that I was putting on, that it was, you know, I am professor, and that comforted me because I was like, okay, I may be in a terrible panic inside, but this group of people, my students, need me to be the one who is able to lead the discussion and set things up. And of course, what we do at the University of Chicago is a lot of discussion-led teaching. And you'd think, oh, you know, if it's a lecture, you're in control, and if it's a discussion, you're not. No, you have, as a teacher with a discussion, have to be in control of making sure everybody else speaks, which has its moments. And so this book that I have, it was when my husband actually.
You're controlling the conch in your classroom.
Always. But the thing is, I can do it by way of lowering my own status so that the students will speak, and then reasserting my status so that, but it's always, it's like you're explaining to these people, you're actually happier when I'm doing the leading, even when I'm handing it over to you to say, okay, now it's your turn.
Yeah, it's much better. Well, we've already established a dynamic.
Yes.
So I get, how should I put this? I'm in not a passive role, but I'm talking with you, and receiving decades of your work, your attempt to problem solve, understand, and tapping into your scholarship and tapping into your depth of knowledge. So even though I'm talking, I'm still using you as a reference point for the direction of the conversation, and also an informational authority at the same time.
Right. I'm thinking so we've just solved how we should be in relation to God. But anyway, keep going.
Well, if you push me to the front in this context, it makes no sense, because I mean, it's your channel, but also I lack the resources to be able to lead the discussion in the way you can do it. So me taking over makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And it feels uncomfortable. Because in this context, I should not be leading you.
So should you ever be leading me?
In things that I would... well...
You can say yes.
No. But there's a caveat there,
right?
Because it's only in situations where the amateur can lead.
Yes. So so we're playing that went in an interesting place with the amateur and the professional, which
yes.
Okay, I'm lowering my status right now. What am I doing? You have to look at the camera to tell it, or you have to look at me, not the camera. Look at the camera.
You're touching your face.
Yes.
Which makes me want to touch my face.
Well, interesting. No, but it's so back when I started teaching, I was quite nervous because I had been used to being in your position, right? And this is also I mean, it's a challenge for everyone who's... I'm going to touch my glasses and I'm going to be really super conscious of this. It's a challenge for everyone who's been good at school. In a school context, right? It's like you've always been the one that had your hand up when the teacher asked a question, right? So you think this is cautionary tale to everybody who wants to go to graduate school, right? You know, I'm going to go and be a teacher, right? But the thing that you don't realize is your teachers have been helping you feel smart the whole time, right? If you've been good at school and you've always been able to answer things and you've always been able to do well on the test, graduate school is going to be a horror for you, because there will come a time when you have to flip it, and you go from being the one who is good in class, who's good at the assignments, who's good at being able to come up with the answer when framed for you. And then you have to, sometime in your transition from being good student to being, assistant professor, faculty member, suddenly become someone who can guide it for somebody else so that other person can be smart. And it's an interesting problem, because I was gonna say, I kind of lost my thread there.
Well, you're not being assessed at that point. You're put in a completely different position of...
on the other hand, you actually are being assessed all the time in a situation where you can actually fail. Whereas in the student role, you can fail at the particular task that the teacher is giving you, but when you are the teacher, you can utterly crash and burn completely. Guys, sure you want to be in graduate school and be doing what? I mean, no. And this is so no. I lost it because I did low status thing, which when I did my iPad, I forgot to. I got iPad, which is the only way I could see the chat. I forgot to, hilariously enough, turn the screensaver off, and so it just shut down. So I need to turn that auto lock off and turn it back on, and I did not do that. So now I've lost status because I had my tech bad.
Back in the basement.
Yeah. So no, I need to retrieve right now, and I'm going to hold status while I figure out what I was talking about. and I will not touch my face. I will remain very still.
I'm going to touch my face because my nose got really itchy when I looked at you doing it. So just stop.
Okay, look, I can't remember what I was going to say. Anyway, that when I started teaching, I realized it was a particular role I had to assume for that group, right? And it wasn't being the smart one anymore. Oh, I mean, I'm thinking also about the conversation that's been going on Social Galactic about IQ. Guess what? And I realized it was a theater. It was a kind of theater performance in an improv. And my husband had this book, Keith Johnston's Improvisation and the Theater, and he recommended it to me. He'd done some theater, and I'm like, oh, this is the masks work is in this book too. But there's also an entire chapter on status and how you can learn it, how it's actually something that those of us who have autistic propensities, maybe I was thinking about that too. I've defaulted to high school. I'm jimbering around. See how much I can keep in control usually. You can feel constantly the low status coming on because you've missed cues and you haven't figured out what's going on. But assuming high status can also be very uncomfortable. I'm just going to go straight to our pictures now because, whoops, no, I did the wrong one. There we go. This, me online, me looking at my face self on Facebook while the other person is talking. How many of you do this? That you're always checking yourself in your mirror of your video to make sure that you're looking the way that you wanted to so that you can have the status that you wish you think you had, but then you're not actually paying control of whose status is. I've totally lost the thread on all of this. You gotta help me.
Well, it's perception management. You're basically describing the problem of perception management because status is perception.
Yes.
As well as it is other things like proficiency and authority.
Well, I think what I was thinking while I was talking was this topic occurred to me because this kind of challenging of status happens constantly on the internet. And the thing is, it happens in this raw form, direct form, very personal form in DMs, right? It's really irritating getting DMs from someone who has not established a proper relationship with me. Just saying, do not DM me, right? And the sort of, you say something online, don't at me, that's like, stop intruding on my willingness to answer questions otherwise by DMing me with your stuff when you do not have that status with me. People on the internet, you need to come through the proper channels so that you are actually performing properly with me before we can get to that. And the other thing being in chats that we've all played with a lot, we post this on YouTube with the comments, every single interaction on the internet is a constant status negotiation.
Yes, it is. Which has been interesting to approach the internet as a medium for art form. Because as we described with the conch episode, in terms of the e-duchies, in order to be effective at particular kinds of art modes, certain kinds of status have to be rejected in order to be possible. Mm-hmm. Because you have to trade. You're trading something in order to attain status, or to reject it. I'm trying to think of a good example of this. So I had this problem. I've always had this problem with people in chats. As you know, where my particular behavior is seen as obnoxious. I think that was one word which was used, and there have been many words used to describe my behavior, but I'm not seen to be behaving in a proper manner towards other people in chat rooms. Because I cannot communicate in the way that I want to if I begin to become polite. The wordplay and the things that I like to do in that environment, it wouldn't be possible in the same way.
Well, so we were calling this episode Snakes and Ladders because of the game, right? And
Mm.
I was also thinking of it as we're in this status game constantly. I mean, that's what the
Mm.
impro chapter is about. He's saying unless actors can learn to exchange status, nothing happens. It's boring
Mm.
as all get out. All drama, all theater. I mean, in fact, all social interactions depend upon, as you're saying, this alternation of status that, and just, the most, now I can't stop touching my hair. It's hilarious. Or in my face is itchy and stuff, and it usually is. It's quite funny, right? So
I've had hours of itchy face.
Itchy face.
As I've been streaming with it. Mm.
Touch. No, but the primary fundamental status is talking is high status, listening is low status.
Mm. Yes, the active passive dynamic.
Right.
Mm.
So if I'm talking and you're listening, I have higher status than you do. So in order for me to encourage you to talk, well, one, I need to shut up. But there are ways that I can you're not doing it. I can't. Pauses are.
Stop it.
Come on, girl, play with me. That there are actually like conversational gambits that you can make. One, I just fall silent and you're listening and you're going to come in. If you make little pause noises, people will be encouraged to think, oh, she's stopping talking, or you're too practiced at waiting for me to stop, so you're not going to interrupt me. But recognizing,
yeah, but the reason for, now I'm going to interrupt you. The reason I do that is because I don't want to miss something where you're mid thought, then I'm thinking here and formulating something in the back of it. So usually I'll wait until I have a very clear idea of what you're talking about, and then I have something to respond with, as opposed to an empty response. Like I don't like interrupting for the sake of interrupting something when I know you're still mid idea. And even doing that just then
gave you status anxiety a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah. It's hard, right?
Well, it seems pointless. No, but it seems pointless to have this interruptiveness just for the sake of it. And now you've got me doing it, and it feels awkward.
Well,
because why? Why? See?
Keep going.
Why am I doing it? It's just to hear the sultry sound of my own voice. That's the only reason I'm doing this right now.
Well, some people do that, right? They're literally talking simply to hear the sound of their own voice, because they know doing so gives them, situationally, momentarily, that status of being the one talking.
Mm-hmm.
No, the thing is, I notice in class, right? People will try, put their hands up to talk, and literally all they want to do is make sure they're talking. And they're not necessarily doing it well. Okay, so there are varieties of things that happen in class. And it's like at Chicago, there's a character who's always that kid, who is the one that always is talking, right? That kid, there he is talking. Now they may be trying to assume high status, which is one thing. They may just be comfortable talking. They may be autists and monologuing, so we have to be patient, and just like really super enthusiastic. But the sort of breaking from one to the other, one, I've made you, unfortunately for this episode, very highly aware of what's going on. But once you become aware of that, then you do recognize, I can't stop now. Don't keep going. No, I'm doomed. I gotta touch my face, lower it so she'll jump in. Oh my God, I can't do this.
My nose is itchy again, and I'm gonna do it. I don't care if you want to put me as a high status. I don't care. We're gonna
both go. I'm lower than you. I'm lower than you. It's sort of the reverse limbo.
The race to the bottom. We just call this episode the race to the bottom.
We slid right down the ladder of status into crawling around on the ground with the snakes and the saints and the pigs in the mud.
Yes.
I mean, but okay. So the funny thing about this is, one, obviously we're friends, so we're comfortable, and this is the other kind of thing. It's like, indeed, if you've tried, autists out there, you're trying to find someone who will do this with you. Exchange status and feel comfortable with it. Definition of friendship, if you're wondering. I'm now.
That made me want to cry a little bit. Well, it's cute. That was really cute. I mean, I like dropped out of high school a bunch of times. So like when you're talking about going back to high school days and having status in high school, my brain's like doesn't compute. I literally ran screaming from those concentration camps multiple times. I jumped over chain link fencing and then just left. Yeah, there were quite a few episodes where I just removed myself from the environment. And it's because it felt like a concentration camp. So I'm trying to think about the other environments where the status exchange has happened that I've actually participated in, because I didn't do the high school one very well. And that would probably be in like groups of people making music where you've got everyone kind of following what they're supposed to be doing, and then someone will do a solo, or someone's got to get louder or softer or whatever, because it kind of it makes sense to me in that environment more than the actual verbal talking.
I turned you into a peacock on screen now. So the pigeon is now our peacock.
That popped up on Instagram. I was very triggered. How dare you take away my pigeon?
But that's the thing. As the pigeon, you're a humble bird and spreading the spirit, and there's no demands on you. Whereas if you're the peacock and male, and because this is a male peacock, it's like, so women, as women, we're supposed to, all of these things you're describing with the music thing. One of the things that I've described is what we're doing when we're writing the poetry, which is, I mean, I say it's tea time. We're writing now, guys. Those of you who are listening, Draco Alchemics Act 1 is drawing to a finale, right? We will have a story out for you in the next few months, years. I don't know. That I bring this all together. I'm commanding it by saying it's start time, stop time, and things like that. But then, yes. And I'm also editing it and correcting things. But there is also a feeling of, conducting a chorus that has to work. Otherwise, the music doesn't happen. There's each of the instruments has to play together with each other, but has to be its own strength. And yes, that you're describing, that music, people that get to play music together, that was my great sorrow in growing up, that I was, this pianist practicing by myself, not getting terrifically good and never being able to play with anybody else. I wanted to play with other people. I wanted to have that experience of, harmonizing together, and now I recognize it in these status exchanges where you make a gesture and someone else picks it up and takes it and then returns it to you, and you make another gesture. And this is what, in Johnston's description of the improv, that's what it is. You make a sort of offering of this scene, right? And in improv, if someone just keeps blocking you, you don't get a drama at all. But if you say yes, then the story unfolds. So we have two problems, so right? Sorry? You
have to follow your cues.
We have to kind of accept the thing that someone says as an invitation to build on, particularly in improv. And people are, if they're not aware of the way they're exchanging or not exchanging status, either they'll try to trump each other and it just kills the scene. Or I guess maybe they both go low, and I don't know, right? It's like all of these things have to sort of very delicately balance out so that the dance happens. One has to lead, one has to follow, but does have to, be an exchange of gestures.
No, that makes perfect sense. It's the active and passive.
We can talk.
It's like
go ahead.
It's like it's like yin yang. You've got that dynamic, that spinning that only happens if you've got this this kind of contrast. Someone has to lead, someone has to follow.
Yeah. I mean, well, there's no such thing as absolute equality. One.
Thank God.
And okay, so we've established a lot of things. One, touching your face lowers your status. Also, waggling your head a lot. If you look at TV announcers, you have to one, hold eye contact, and which we're doing with our cameras, and keep your head very steady. Don't touch your face. All of these things will help you when you go into the classroom and you're worrying about establishing your authority, which is actually a feature of the way the teacher himself behaves, not the people in the classroom. We're going to talk about high school now.
Oh God, now I'm gonna.
You picked this movie, which I'm not even sure I've seen.
I'm gonna have a post-traumatic stress episode live in the stream.
You will have to.
Yeah, because I did. I put that. Is it up?
Yep.
Yeah. So The Breakfast Club. I had to pick that one for the theme of high and low status exchange. Because for anyone who's seen it, it's. Why are you reading? You're looking down at your book while I'm talking. This is so bad.
Which status does that give me? Are you? It's still high. Yes, keep going. I'm hearing you.
She's blatantly ignoring me.
I'm not ignoring you. I'm really not. I'm looking for this.
You've got me Spurg monologuing, and you're flicking gently through your book as I'm speaking.
Everyone,
shall I leave?
Okay, we're losing. Oh, now we're losing watchers. Come back, people. Mel says you haven't seen Breakfast Club. We had to watch that in school. What are they doing showing you Breakfast Club in school? That's like mirror magic of layered of sorts. Okay, please carry on talking. Yes. I will look at the camera.
She's lying. I knew it. I knew you were about to do that. Well,
we're teaching them all the techniques they know, clearly. I mean, that they need to know. Yes, go ahead.
Now I've lost it. Oh, God.
We were both nervous. We were actually both nervous about this episode. Now we're proving why.
If she doesn't lead, it all falls apart. This is why you don't challenge authorities that are competent.
Bingo.
Never.
Now we've demonstrated it. If you were ever wondering, you come in, Gamma guys, and you challenge the Alpha. It's not going to happen. It's not going to work. The Alpha is doing something you don't see. And if you could see it, you wouldn't be challenging him. She sees. So, carry on.
I do. Yeah, what are we talking about? There we go. Okay, I'm back. So we've got this. We've got the motley crew of all the students that are plucked out of their weekend and forced to go to the concentration camp for a Saturday detention. And the fascinating thing about that movie is the difference in status between all of these students, the 5 students, at the beginning of the film and then at the end, and all of the switches that are going on throughout the story. Things are not as they seem, and as you've mentioned with the Gammas challenging the Alphas, there is a very good demonstration of what it actually means to be Alpha in that little group during the Breakfast Club. So the three guys there. There's the bad boy, then there's the jock, and then there's the nerd kid. The 3 of them have a really interesting dynamic, trying to figure out who's following who and that kind of thing throughout the film. You're doing it again.
What? I'm looking at you.
Now I'm just permanently nervous because I know that I'm leading it.
See, no, it's we're gonna have a therapy session next episode to rebuild our rapport that we've spent how many ever episodes creating. Now we're wrecking it for your information, for our viewers' learning experience. Aren't we generous?
The hierarchies are all
They
crumbling.
are.
I feel like we're being plunged into chaos. I
Do
don't like
do
it.
you see? I actually, so no, you don't like it, and what's funny about all of this is, you know, I'm INTJ or autist or whichever. I like being in charge in very specific kinds of encounters and situations, such as leading my class or writing our poetry or something like that. I am actually not really that interested in being the alpha of everything, right? I have zero interest in being dean or, you know, for heaven forbid, anything higher than that. And it's you know, I welcome being in the role that you're in, typically with me, which is, you know, you're supporting someone who else is taking the charge. So no, but the thing is, to be a good supporter is actually just as important as being a good leader, because otherwise nothing happens.
No. the creative process of a conversation is destroyed without that dynamic. So we're demonstrating it very clearly now, but you know, I'm thinking, man, I hated high school so much. Okay, so this
channel
film is basically,
let's I got a lot of high school that we can share.
I have to tap into my favorite emotion, which is hate. In this case, this is an artificial kind of environment. So the hierarchy formation is different because it's not natural. They're very supervised kind of hierarchy contests. So when all the kids go into the Saturday detention, they've got the teacher there who's overseeing them and saying, don't move, don't do this, you know, blah, 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 laying out all of the rules. The only kid who's willing to challenge that authority is the bad boy character. He's not a gamma. It's not challenge to an alpha. He's not doing a gamma challenge. He's actually trying to establish himself as the alpha in the situation by refusing the instruction of the teacher. The other kids are really uncomfortable with it because they're recognizing the status of the teacher as valid. You know, they're looking to him as an authority. Whereas the Judd Nelson character rejects his authority for quite a few reasons, but it's like looking at someone who actually wants to have a contest to establish status based on like a genuine authority, you know. He's really conscious that the kids are being held hostage in that environment, and so he's poking all of them throughout the film to try and unravel the hierarchy that they're already in, because they come in with this particular status. Each of them come in with a social status that they're clinging onto, and so Judd Nelson spends the entire film poking them, provoking them, trying to unravel it, trying to make them justify the status that they've carried into the detention, and then flipping everybody's status throughout the Saturday detention. So it's really interesting. So he's basically doing to them what you were doing to me at the beginning of the stream. And of course they hate him for it. Because it's a horrible experience. It's a horrible feeling having your status challenged, even if it's a low status.
Yes.
People get very comfortable in their positions.
We've witnessed that, and I mean we can see that in the chats. People that they're low status trolls, but their trolling wants to keep them low status. They don't actually want to level up or transform in any way because they're comfortable where they are.
Yeah, I mean, like I think I yelled at someone because they were talking a lot of blah blah about risk, which pricked my attention very quickly, because I thought, okay, hold on a second. In this environment, there's a really different sense of risk than there is in the outside. So similarly to high school, it's structured. And so there's a grappling for status, but with a different kind of risk that's happening. And what I see our work being is primarily the art risk of being able to push a conversation somewhere, push a concept somewhere, and disturb a status quo. We're playing with language to disturb the status quo of our language. To me, that's constant risk, because we can't stagnate while we're doing it. And between the tea times, there are all of these little conversations that are happening that are feeding into our poetry hour, our tea time hour altogether. So when this person said, "Oh, you're afraid of being embarrassed or whatever," I said, "No, like this is the thing that I found really key to that conversation. It's that the fear, like we were saying last week, the fear of embarrassment keeps people stuck in their status, which is why when you just tried to give me the leadership role over this stream, I'm wrestling with it, because I think, it's the nanosecond of panic, but also thinking, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, you even knew I was doing it on purpose, although I didn't warn you.
Yeah, I know.
So, I kind of warned you, but I didn't, right? It's like, what is she doing? Right? Yeah. Why? Like, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? And then also, like, if you're serious, I'm actually responsible for guiding the next 2 hours of conversation. Now you know what the graduate students feel like when it's their turn to lead the class, and I'm sitting there going, notes. I will save you from this. I will give you advice. I will tell you to read this book and figure out how to hold the status. What I was looking for, and you're right, not even sure it's in this book. There was an account of several different teachers that the students liked and didn't like and such, and there was a problem of, like, one of them getting fired. I think it's in here, and I can't remember where it was. They said there was one teacher that we liked, but we didn't want him to get fired, and he was going to get fired because the class was always misbehaving. And one day he came in, and we sort of stayed quiet for a little bit, and then just everybody started disrupting and misbehaving anyway, even though they didn't want to. And then there was another teacher that was, very disciplinarian and keeping control, and everybody really disliked them. And there was a third, this is the Goldilocks version of it, right, who didn't seem to be doing much, but the class all behaved and everybody liked him and lots of work got done. And It could be exactly the same class with 3 different teachers. And this is, there's research about this, of other things that I could reference, that everything depends on how the teacher behaves towards the students. And the core thing is the teacher must behave not with respect, but in a relaxed way that reassures the students that he or she is actually going to be taking care of the situation. So the teacher that they liked but didn't, that got fired anyway because they all started misbehaving, he was doing all sorts of lowering status cues. So they just did, right? And this it's a sort of phenomenon that one of my great favorites in training teacher stuff has talked about, Robert Boyce. The thing is, I don't want to play reference because I don't want to play high status about I know stuff and things like that. I just want to get this thought out, and I'm stumbling.
Just cut it. Just cut everyone's name to a nickname. Just like calling him Bobby.
Anyway, what he's studied a lot of classroom interactions, and it's often blamed on the students, right? In other kinds of schools, like, oh, you teach in the University of Chicago, of course your students behave. And I'm like, my students behave because I expect them to. I like them. I want them to do well. I want them to learn from me. And I come in and it's like, we're going to learn. And I have no worries whatsoever, well, sort of, about, this role is going to take it. They're going to behave. And I literally have never had, I never have trouble in my classes. I just don't, right? I maybe one time in 30 years of teaching, I had one student who kind of misbehaved. It never happens.
Join the internet.
Except from the internet. But the thing is, it never happens. And the improv stuff and the teacher training stuff is recognized. The people that come in and desperately want to hold control, and they write long syllabi that have lots of rules, and they're going to punish everybody if they make they're the ones that like you're describing with the kid in the cast in the skit role, whatever movie. He's misbehaving because it's the wrong kind of authority that the teacher is trying to hold over them in detention.
Yes.
That was a very long-winded way of saying that, right? Strong leadership is invisible in interesting ways, right? It's like the actual higher status and stronger role that you play, the less apparently visibly you have to do in order for the group to work properly. And these sort of mysteries of hierarchy are, I mean, one day we're going to do the women one. We're going to just keep deferring that and promise it, and one day eventually. Oh, look, Ken says
the mythical stream to come.
We've got a super chat that I have to read because it's yellow and therefore it leaps out. Ken says, I want to be an Air Force Ranger. I have no idea where that's coming from. Thank you for the support, Ken. That what had just happened? Mel, you're talking a lot, and I'm not gonna be able to read all of these. Oh, wait. Okay, look, we've got a number of people that have joined us. Etherzar is here, welcome. Samuel H. Enchanté, welcome. Casey and Mel are teammates. Okay, she's an autist, she can't lead anymore. Isaiah and Annie Z, woot woot. Bishop, rarely able to catch the show. Greetings. Oh, thank you for being here. Charlie, what's going on? Well, we're trying to explain. Bishop, now the text in the Telegram post with the game board makes more sense. Oh, good, right? Okay. Isaiah and Annie Z, wolves are happier when they're not the alpha. Yes, I mean, having to be the king is not necessarily a happy place. Mel, this is how I feel in our writing group. I'm such an undergrad still, and you are all the grad students. Well, okay. All right, so we seem to be communicating. Our class is carrying on with us. Very good. I will now sit still.
They are.
Quietly, looking strange.
Please don't.
No, well, so no. There's all sorts of other things. Like high status is relaxed, right? And this is why it's particularly challenging when you're first starting, because to stay relaxed is like maybe more than you can possibly achieve. And the most important thing to maintain your status is high status is the most relaxed person in the room, ironically. So that you're sort of confident in your leadership. And if you're not confident in your leadership, you're going to be communicating that to everybody, and they're going to start challenging you like the bad kid in the movie. Okay.
Yes, exactly. No, I'm just thinking that the horrendous position when you're a relaxed person who doesn't want to be in leadership positions, and people start deferring to you because you're giving off the signals that you're in that position and you don't want it.
That could happen too. Okay,
Yes.
So tell me about the other characters. I may have seen this movie. I can't remember. So you need to lay it out for us.
Okay, so we've got our bad boy, and then we've got the wrestler, the jock, who is constantly pushed to achieve excellence in his athleticism, not doing very well academically, but everybody gives him free passes because he's amazing at wrestling. And then the little nerd boy, who is on a bunch of extracurricular teams that are all maths and science related. So he really trusts the science, but very unrespected by the other two boys. The girls in the film are good. Oh, my computer's doing something. See, my computer doesn't give me status. It interrupts. the two girls in this movie are basically, um, I think they're good archetypes for female social-sexual hierarchy, really, because you've got the pretty rich girl who's very popular. Everybody knows who she is. Everybody likes her. She's in very social clubs. And then you've got the other one who is kind of goth looking, but she's very odd and kind of a basket case. They don't move in the same social circles whatsoever. So yeah, you've got this dynamic of like rich, extroverted, and then eccentric and introverted. So you see like how the girls kind of interact with each other as well, which is really interesting. But they don't get to keep their status because the bad boy is constantly provoking them into abandoning their roles. So yeah, the girl in pink, she maintains an air of being virtuous and respectable and never dates the wrong boys, has a lot of money, parents are taking her on holiday to Paris, and she's provoked throughout the movie to admit that she's self-conscious about it. She's self-conscious about having to maintain that status.
Ken is trying to gain status by giving us these yellows. Goth.
He's buying his way to the top, baby.
To the top. Goth girl wasn't being punished, am I right? She came to detention for fun. Happens.
Yes.
Okay. So she's there for fun.
That's how odd she is. She just decided to go. But she's also provoked. You know, she's kind of volunteered herself into this odd alchemical experience of being pushed out of her shell throughout the whole day. And they have to see themselves in different lights, you know. So we have the teacher constantly coming back in to make sure they're sitting in their proper places, which is a good kind of visual. And then when he leaves the room, they jump up and they move around, but they're trying to break out of the library where they're being held and walk around and everything. And so their willingness or unwillingness to take risks throughout the film, it's reshuffling their status with each other all the time. Until they kind of land in completely different positions by the end of the film.
So I've not seen the movie, and one of the reasons is I don't want to see the movie. And I think it's because I'm resistant to the idea that, I mean, a lot of Hollywood does this, right? That you start with one status, and there's always, I mean, the trope in a Hollywood movie, there's someone who has a very, you know, sort of proper status, and by the end of the movie, like Grease, right? They're you know, not even goth girl, they're, you know, they're leather and their hair is all frizzy and that the theater, and this is also probably why I don't like Dead Poets Society, for there are a variety of reasons for it, but one, because it makes, you know, my job look silly. That it's always, the answer is always to change your status to the artist, and who breaks all the boundaries, and who is in fact a kind of gamma fulfillment fantasy secret king of the writers of the show itself. That, you know, yes, we are stuck in this as artists who, like, the thing is, you and I as artists don't want this, but the trope is, and what Vox always called the gamma fulfillment fantasy was, right, you are secretly the one who actually has all the answers, and so you're going to break out of that low status that you have, and everybody's going to love you by the end of it. You're going to tell me that this is a better movie than that. But it's why I've resisted seeing it, because I don't want yet another of those, you know, obviously drama depends on the inversions. and it's like you have in our slides one of the specific inversions that happens in the story. That there's the man of the year, Carl Reed, is that his picture on the wall in the library?
It's a little detail. It's a little hidden detail. So throughout the film, the janitor is there and he's cleaning up and he's watching everything and observing them all. And at one particular point has a monologue with the teacher and says that he's the eyes and ears of the institution. You know, he sees all, hears all, and understands the dynamics everywhere, and also calls the teacher out on his frustration. You know, the aggression that he displays towards the students coming from his sense of he has a lack of fulfillment in his own status. He's not comfortable. He feels like he hasn't landed where he should have landed in his own vision of the hierarchy outside. Whereas Carl the janitor, he was man of the year when he was at that high school, and then he ends up being the janitor. So he's gone from a position of very high status to very low, but he's very satisfied with it. He seems to be satisfied with it, not complaining, and not particularly bitter, but very aware of the abuse of authority of that particular teacher, in that he's taking out his frustration on the students under him. So he's essentially he's being a bad alpha in that environment.
Well, I think so. This is right to go off on the social sexual hierarchy part for a second. So there was an extended conversation over the last few days on Social Galactic, and then which those of you who are not subscribed to Unauthorized TV won't be able to watch it because it's subscription only. Talk about status. That Social Galactic is the social media platform associated with Unauthorized TV, so please subscribe and then you can join. But Vox was posting about it and then linking on it, and there was a big conversation going on about IQ apparently. And I think within Vox's streams, I realized, oh no, there was something else going on than what actually happened in the Social Galactic conversation. But you almost invariably, someone brings up IQ, and then there's a long, sort of list of everybody saying what theirs is.
Yeah.
And, the sort of problem of what Vox is calling the midwit, who is, usually in the tested range around 130, everybody calculate. Sorry. I'm losing my.
You just lost 10 status points.
I'm going to not cough in your ear by turning my microphone off. Just a second.
See, I don't like leading. She's eating a lolly. She's breaking. I'm
breaking all the rules. How appropriate is this, right? Okay, so I've got my wine to hopefully keep me from coughing because I talk a lot. My throat gets dry. Not dying of COVID. That everybody starts talking about their IQ, and I obviously know what mine is because, at least I have a range. Because Vox always talks about how those of us who are Gen X, therefore older than you, were tested constantly as we were growing up, and that the standardized tests that we got were actually convertible into IQ scores because the tests that we were given, like the PSAT and the SAT, and then I was in grad school, so I also took the GRE, which was the SAT again, basically, can convert into IQs.
I've never done the test.
Well, you're young enough that none of these, well, when they were American tests, but two, they're not meaningful anymore because they skewed them all. You were talking about the athlete, the wrestler, and I'll go back in pictures.
Yes.
The wrestler. Just today, I saw a headline saying our National Collegiate Athletic Association, the NCAA, that regulates the participation of our varsity athletes in sports, has ceased requiring the SAT as a standard.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So it's like it's like talking about cutting gazillion different ways in terms of status. It's like saying, "Oh, you're saying that
Yeah.
athletes aren't able to do well enough on the SAT? Really? I thought that was supposed to be the thing that we were never allowed to say because they're the dumb jocks, don't you know?" It's like I cannot believe they did that. So, but it's this horrible anxiety now. If we're supposed to have status but not have status. We're supposed to be testable for one kind of status, the IQ stuff, but
Yes.
and athletic status is supposed to be real and transferable into actual winning at sports. But no, you can. It's like the we're in a very funny time when, like, which status are we allowed to assume and hold? And of course, one of the things that we're in our little corner of the internet frustrated and furious about is how people who have none of that skill status or social responsibility status are trying, like, it's caricature this teacher in the Breakfast Club movie, simply assert it and wield it because they're in a particular institutional position. I can't keep high status with my mouth full of a lozenge so that I don't cough at you. All of our streams always become so meta. Why is this happening?
It's weird. Every single week something happens. It's great. No, it's the demanding of status because you're in an institutional position. I think this is why I had such a problem with the high school environment too, because
we've got 12 watching now,
Oh. Well, they're the demands of obedience in an environment where there's no responsibility towards the people that are obeying you, I find very disturbing. I feel like in my conception of people that are in a position of authority or in a position of leadership, like you are with the stream, to carry the stream, you're getting us through these huge long format conversations, which get very complicated and abstract sometimes because we're using images and referencing things, but you're carrying it and you're responsible for carrying it. So, like, following somebody who is acknowledging that they have a responsibility, there is a respect there. It's like the way that the high, that high school setup is, that it felt like being supervised without any of that same investment from the authorities that were involved in supervising everybody on the bottom.
That's a good description of when institutions are failing, because
they all had this feeling, and I went to a lot of them.
Yeah.
It was not an unwillingness to learn, as I'm sure you can assume. The problem I had with them was that they did not encourage risk-taking in the way that I felt needed to happen to unleash potential intelligence and creative energy. And then there were the artificial social hierarchies because they weren't related to life outside of this particular environment. It was sterilized of the reality of class outside. I mean, that everyone has to put on a uniform in Australia. See, it's different here than for Americans. Everybody's put into a uniform if they're in a public school here. So we don't go in casual clothing. So the idea is to kind of eliminate any markers of inequality. So you take people's status from outside the institution and demand that it's left outside, and then invite everybody into this sterile vacuum of total equality and sameness as much as possible. And people are rebelling against that, and so they're trying to achieve markers of status to kind of reclaim it in other ways that don't make any sense, while being supervised by people who are essentially not responsible whatsoever for what's happening on the inside, because their relationship to the students there are, I mean, it's purely transactional. There's no true social responsibility because of the way that the institutions are set up. It's corporate education. It's not religious or monastic, or
Well, now you're anticipating our answer, but you said corporate, and maybe not that way. But let's take our next movie as example.
Okay.
Trading Places, which I have seen many times. I do enjoy this movie. So you're saying the high school is a sterile and false environment. What about the Trading Places environment? Is that more real? I think one thing I was thinking when you're talking about the students is people are going to establish hierarchies one way or another, even when you in the school environment try to pretend that there aren't any. It's actually more honest to accept that there are going to be hierarchies, but then we end up in the social problem of trading places. So tell me why you picked this one.
Oh, okay, because that was a great inversion. Well, talking about the snakes and ladders problem, that to me this was, I mean, we haven't even really talked about the board game yet, but having the set curriculum in the schooling environment felt very much like the destiny of everyone inside is preset. It's different when you're at the collegial level. Like with you working in the university system, there's a lot more flexibility. But being a student in the high school environment, you really are running on a very inflexible track because you've got to get through that industrial education process. So it's very, very, very fixed. You can fail or succeed, of course, but there aren't massive potentials, surprise. There's no massive potential for surprise. Trading Places was a kind of contrast to this, because you've got the protective environment of public school, like where the breakfast club kids are. It's very, very sterilized and risk minimized environment. Going into somewhere like a Wall Street trading floor is probably the most risky environment on planet Earth. You go in
socially, yes.
So yeah, well, yes, socially, but in terms of like the instant effect and also visually how it works with everybody trading, constantly swapping information, constantly swapping an investment of their energy or money, and having this Dan Aykroyd character who's incredibly affluent, and then being thrown into poverty. Then also Eddie Murphy starting out as this a beggar who's pretending to be a Vietnam veteran. He ends up on the trading floor. So this idea of having a huge inversion of role that can be switched back and forth very instantly depending on your luck in that environment and whatever fortune or misfortune you bet on or you land on at that particular moment. Going into that trading floor, it's like everybody and everyone involved in the investment and everybody involved in that stock exchange is taking a risk and gambling on the potential inversion of status. They want to go from low to high. So the greater the risk, the greater the reward. And you see massive inversions all the time. And that's why I chose it, because the relationship between the two characters in Trading Places shows that.
So what I thought, so that's not why I thought you chose it. I thought you chose it
Ah.
because it's now we're showing they're both black right now. Um,
That too.
the whole, you know, spoiler alert, that the whole premise of it is that the old men, which I don't have in the pictures, but that they're making a bet whether or not the Dan Aykroyd character, who's grown up wealthy, could manage being poor, and
Oh yes,
whether
that too.
the Eddie Murphy character could do anything effectively. So
Mm,
and you know, it's, and they're doing this playing with people's lives as trading places, because of course the Aykroyd and Murphy characters end up beating the old guys too. So that's a sort of, there's layers and layers of inversion that are going on in it, but that they are
yes.
assuming that social status is inborn, right? It's nature nurture problem. Is there, you
Yes.
know, is your, so I was acting earlier, sort of, right? I mean, it's like the because you can't, I mean, we all experience the higher status and low status, and there is this sort of traumatic problem. We've been playing with it a little bit, you know, when the saying how hard it is in the role that we're used to having changing. But with trading places, they're saying, could you change your entire social status? And what would you
Mm.
do? Would the Dan Aykroyd character, even thrust out into poverty and having to make his way on the streets and meeting the Jamie Lee Curtis character, right? Um, oh, Pirates are a different one. That's a different status game. The, you know,
Yeah.
meeting her, she's a prostitute, right? Um,
Yes.
whether we are born into our social status, or whether we are, you know, whether we're born into it because it's right and natural to us to have that status, or whether we are accidentally born into a particular social status, but it's not necessarily the one that is most natural to us, which is that. I mean, it's the nature and nurture debate, right? So, can you actually change your social
Yes.
status at all, by your own behavior, or are you always going to be playing low, even if you are, well, whatever. Now I've scrambled it up.
Well, this was linked to the Breakfast Club. So it's the concept of education as
Right,
a destiny game, because like everyone arguing on Social Galactic about IQ, you know, the IQ is predictor of excellence, and the IQ is predictor of uh, life outcomes later on down the track. This machinery, this high school machinery, is a kind of sorting mechanism for everybody to have their assigned social destinies
right.
fixed. And this is why I wanted to kind of use that um, dramatic look at how their social destinies are fixed in these high school students going forward into the world where you have, in a different environment, the potential for changing social status in a way that it it's not necessarily reliant on IQ.
Well, that, I think that's the premise that the old men who are making the bet are testing, right? Is the Eddie
Mm,
Murphy character poor because he's stupid, or is he poor because it's
yes.
an accident of circumstance? And is the Dan Aykroyd character rich because he's smart, or because it's an accident of circumstance? And that yes, that's exactly it with the IQ debate. I mean, the thing that Vox, you know, has frequently said, and I can, you know, humbly verify as a problem, is having a high IQ as such is not necessarily a great guarantee of social success, because you basically end up with nobody understanding what you're talking about.
Mhm.
Whereas, you know, social success depends on creating particular kinds of agreement of, I think this is not something I thought about until just now, but I mean, actual social success is more at that quote midwit 130 level, because one, a lot of people can understand you, you're smarter than the average people, so you can make good decisions, but you're not in a situation where you simply see patterns that nobody else recognizes and therefore already kicks you out because you sound crazy, right? So the you know, the trading places premise is the smarter you are, the more money you're going to make on that trading floor, which is back to what we we think about this racial problem that we're constantly in, which is what the NCAA is now playing that it's not going to try to recognize. That, you know, are people in groups more or less likely to achieve certain kinds of excellence because of their inborn abilities? And then we're saying, well, but the social status, it's performative regardless, right? It's not whether you're smart or that's what the social sexual hierarchy is so interesting. It's like, are those inborn or are they learned? Well, one of the things, again, I'll just keep adding to the things I learned from Vox, he said, is the problem with the people that are irritating and gamma-like, and I'm not sure where the women fit in this, or so you guys men, is in some smaller circumstances, they were the smartest one in the room, and then they get into a bigger pool, the bigger fish, this big fish and the little fish in a big pond now. Problem is they're suddenly surrounded by people with abilities that in fact are greater than theirs. And they don't know how to switch status. They don't know how to go from being someone who was the smartest in his class to average.
Yes. Which is, yeah, it's an interesting problem, because there's a reluctance for growth, also a lack of humility.
Yeah.
But also, it's difficult. I mean, it's a bit like Dan Aykroyd growing up rich and then becoming impoverished temporarily. How do you accommodate your life? How do you accommodate to a life of reduced influence when you're used to having almost, complete monopoly on it? It's like going from rich to poor in a lot of ways.
Well, and this, I was thinking about this somewhat seriously in the, you know, so my play acting low status, but what would I do if I were actually in true low status situation? I mean, I sort of, we could go to pirates for, you know, it's like the pirates have no status socially, as it were, but they have status on their own ship and in their adventures. But you know, some of us are, this is going darker than I had planned, but anyway, we go there. Some of us are worried about looking at, you know, what if you lost everything? What if you truly lost your reputation? You lost your job, you lost your family, you lost, I mean, the pirates end up, that's like they're outcasts and out there, and they get to sort of recreate something. But I mean, the IQ conversation to me was this thing of, well, you know, the ones at the 130s don't know what to do when they've met, you know, the 150s who suddenly know stuff that they don't talk about. And what would you do at 150 if you met someone that was 180, right? And Fox is like, well, you'd actually be happy because you finally have someone who is in a situation to understand what you're trying to point to. I was thinking, I just hear the confession, I'm gonna peel this out. I use the IQ gauge that I was given by those tests to tell me I'm not crazy, because otherwise I'm surrounded by people who are telling me I am. And that was an interesting insight for me, that I'm fairly confident I'm smart, but what if I'm actually nuts? And that's why I keep seeing these things that nobody else sees, and why, you know, when I hear a lecture on X, Y, or Z, I ask a question, and am I asking a question that's stupid, or am I asking a question that the person I'm asking the question of could not answer because they can't see what I'm trying to show them? And you know, that's why I think, you know, there's certain kinds of social testing that the pirates are participating in the movies that are overt, right? If I've got a sword and I can kill you and I can persuade you that I'm stronger than you are, I have a different kind of status than if I'm on a live stream telling you patterns about, you know, the meaningfulness of life and the Trinity, for example. And you can't see it and you don't know what I'm talking about, and so you yell at me. Never would happen.
No one would ever do that.
No one would ever do that. So that was just a big status challenge in some context, right? It's like you are status is not always that transparently negotiable. I think maybe. I mean, this is the pirates are. We've got Barbarossa and Elizabeth dressed as a pirate queen, I guess, and Johnny Jack, right? I mean, there's all sorts of interesting, like, real life status as against the character status, and can you play this kind of character? I mean, Johnny Depp obviously has incredibly high status because he can morph between so many different characters, which someone who's just handsome and you know, like Orlando Bloom can't morph between some. Although he's better in these pirate movies than I think people give him credit for. You know, that they're different. They're different kinds of performance status. And we're all negotiating these constantly all the time. And we know it. We do know it. You know, I'm high status in this one category and low status in this other category. And you're sort of desperately trying to be in balance in a place where you don't feel humiliated.
Yeah, or incompetent.
Yeah.
Because the issue is the humiliation, but it's also that if you want something to be done well, it's frustrating when it's not. If you can't do something that you're supposed to be doing, it's frustrating. You know, if you don't hit a note or you can't keep rhythm with the rest of the band, it's incredibly frustrating. Things become discordant. So like in terms of the challenge that we've had with the poetry, there's been an incredible amount of pressure having to keep up with the rest of the room during those tea times. Because if I'm not paying attention, or if one of us are not paying attention, we miss it.
Mm-hmm.
Because things are going very, very fast. We have an expectation that there's going to be output. So even if we're saying crazy things, or the suggestions are not quite right, we want to maintain a level of output there, and maybe that's the other issue too. It's a lot of the status problems that we have now are based only on avoiding embarrassment, but not necessarily anybody assessing what the output is of people in particular positions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so now, but the thing is, now you're actually, for me, in very comfortable and familiar territory, because I make myself embarrassed all the time. And this is, okay, so we were sort of charting through. Tar Baby, welcome. You're not late. You can always watch the beginning later and jump in the stream. Yes, baby. Tar Baby just showed up, said over an hour in, I never make it to stream in time, but you're here now, and that's what counts.
Neither do I.
I just started this one when she wasn't even there yet. Okay, think about it, right? We have, and this is obviously why it's so complicated. And we could literally talk about human status interactions forever, because it's the single most fascinating thing that we do as human beings is establish status with each other, right? It's like, I think we have more pirates. Here's Elizabeth as her beautiful dress self and as her pirate self, and I think there's one of her commanding the men. We'll hold with that one for a second. All drama depends on this. All stories depend on these. I mean, tragedy and comedy are quite simple. Comedy is, well, I'll look at my book, but Johnston describes it as it's status. When someone high status loses status, but you don't feel the need to have sympathy for them. Mm-hmm. I'm with that. I love slapstick. And I realized I was watching Home Alone with my mom over Christmas, and we were just howling. It was the funniest thing we'd ever seen. It's mainly because of all the physical comedy where the bad guys are getting bonked on heads with irons and stuff. And I'm like, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. I have no idea. I have not laughed so hard since it's this, the gay blade with George Hamilton as Zora. It's like, physical comedy, you take the sympathy away from the cartoon character that's being beat up, and it can be okay because you don't have to have sympathy with them. Tragedy, obviously, you have a very high status character who continuously plays high status and is still humiliated, right? So the humiliation in the tragedy is they this is in improv. I didn't figure this out myself, but that all of the other gradations of status interactions are in fact what we live with. I mean, when Johnston's trying to train his actors, he gives them the practice of trade status just a little bit, right? Do just a little higher, just a little lower, not like master slave, which he also has them do, or master servant, but can you what kind of drama comes out of simply reversing things just a little bit? And then we end up with, in fact, all of the different ways that you can hold status, whether it's performatively in a conversation, or whether it's on skill based, or whether it's institutionally situated, or whether it's masculine or feminine, and we can just be going on forever.
Well, that's the chat drama.
Mm-hmm.
And what you described is that's why I was getting so mad. Because I think I'm anchored in comedy in the sense that, no, I'm not very sympathetic.
Well, you don't, but the thing is, you do not try to make yourself sympathetic in the sense of, come in that, because that's a status, that's a status game too. It's like, I'd have to look at my book. Okay, but he says, my belief at this moment is that people have a preferred status, that they like to be low or high, and that they try to maneuver themselves into the preferred positions. A person who plays high status is saying, don't come near me, I bite. Someone who plays low status is saying, don't bite me, I'm not worth the trouble. In either case, the status is played as a defense, and it usually works. It's very likely that you will increasingly be conditioned into playing the status that you found an effective defense. You become a status specialist, very good at playing one status, but not very happy or competent at playing the other. Asked to play the wrong status, you'll feel undefended.
Ooh. Then we get to the problem of vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Stripping status for vulnerability. This is good. It's necessary, but that's a different problem altogether. Because people cannot become vulnerable in all situations. But if you don't become vulnerable ever, then the art dies. The drama dies of an interaction. So we have this. So we have the story, the pirate's story. They fracture into all of these warring factions, constantly shifting their allegiance with each other. They're never truly faithful to one ship captain, that's part of it. But the allegiances shift depending on the willingness of the ship captains to demonstrate a vulnerability to their own men at times, or an invulnerability. Like there's a shift in their invulnerability and vulnerability, which changes their allegiances. So Jack is hateful when he's looking very selfish, and then he's annoying his own crew, and they mutiny.
Right.
So they've got rid of him. They steal the pill. He assembles another crew. And throughout those stories, it's the push and pull of people either loving or hating him, which directs their, it redirects their allegiance to him as the captain. And at moments, he willingly rejects status to reveal vulnerability, and that's why he keeps he returns to his position as captain. People are willing to go and risk their lives for him, despite hating him at times. So, yeah, what you've just described is a kind of social problem that we're experiencing now, I think, because I'd say especially for women, talking about something going into our women's, the necessity for women to decide which status they're going to hold, which status they're trying to retain and which they're willing to relinquish, affecting their place in the world. I'm like, the idea is, it's hard to describe. Women cannot hold high status in certain positions unless they're invulnerable. But the problem with being a woman is femininity is vulnerability. So we have a bit of a crisis as women, because we're told to attain status in the world, to seek equality with men, and then if we seek equality, we lose the dramatic push and pull that's necessary to have relationships with people, and intimate relationships with people. So the challenge for women, and I think this is why a lot of them are so terrified, is that we've been, and I speak for myself too, we get pushed through the social arena to prepare us to go out and achieve status in environments where men are also trying to achieve status. We're competing with them in those environments. And I mean, I'm basically saying that the equality kills intimacy.
Yes.
It kills intimacy. Yeah.
But we're figuring out why, right? It's not that there's and I have Elizabeth with her different costumes on now, but I'd say so women that it's interesting when we're playing through this. So we start with the Breakfast Club, and they're the girls in the school, and the boys are competing in one status hierarchy, and the women are competing in a different one, and we have the men competing directly in the business world. And this problem of, are you going to succeed because of your innate talent or because of the situation that you're born in? And the women, of course, it's like, what innate talent do we have? What situation we're born in? What I've learned for the most part, and maybe we're moving into being able to talk about our women's hierarchy problem. We'll have to, can we sneak up on it instead of announcing it directly? Is that women think they want to play the hierarchy game, and they really don't. They want to win, and they cheat because they're not in fact competing on the same terms that the men are ever. And this holds in all situations, right? We do cheat in men's terms because we have well, it's like what's interesting when I was reading this about the high status, don't come near me, don't bite me, I'm not worth the trouble. Women will be in high status and then play low status very quickly of don't hit me, right? I say this as a fencer. And I'd say this having done it as a fencer, right? I've gotten hit really hard by a man and said, you can't hit me that hard, I'm a woman, which is unfair to them because they're there to fence, right? But when they're fencing me, they can't fence me like they fence another guy of, their same age and ability. So I recognize that I've become pirate-like, much more aware of these kinds of status interactions, male to female, precisely because I'm doing it at this physical level of martial art. which makes a lie of all the social pretense that we are competing on equal terms, because we're not. I have weapons they don't have and they can't use, one of which is don't hit me, I'm a girl.
Yeah.
Which is therefore showing Elizabeth here, talking about our snakes and ladders, you know, having climbed to the top of this particular one and commanding her ship. She's not in a fair position for the men, because her status is different from a man's status in that same role.
Yeah, her status can't be challenged in the same way that a man's can.
Right.
So the cheat codes, we're revealing the female cheat code. But
well, I think what we're proving that this is way harder than people think it is. Maybe we're just women, right? And setting this. So there's you know, on my one level, we'll stick with, you know, the masks that we understand that we wear, which I'm still not, you know, I autist is an interesting diagnostic and description, but what I am aware of is I'm aware of wearing masks always. And that masks go with different roles and they go with different status, and I will become incredibly upset if you try to make me change my mask when I'm playing one role. And I'll get, I mean, I can think of times when I've had kind of odd little social interactions where I think I'm behaving correctly in the situation and I get challenged on something, and okay, the one, like, lower my status a little bit, the one sort of specific and silly example, I'm in a shop, like a hardware store in New York City, and I'm in grad school, and it's because it's a shop in New York City, it's very narrow. It's like up by Columbia where I was, and so their stuff is all very closely shelved, and I'm standing basically in the doorway looking at whatever it was, locks probably, and I'm aware of this woman with a stroller or something like that who's near me, but not yet in a place where I need to move so that she could go through the door. And so I'm as far as I'm concerned, completely aware of the fact that she's there. But then I get this, and I'm going to move when she actually makes a move to get out. But she's like, you know, well, excuse me. And because I was so affronted at the thought that she was accusing me of not being socially in the right situation there, I kind of leapt out the door. In this very silly way. I can still remember it, so dumb, right? It's like completely overreacted to being challenged in a very stupid little social situation of, please move, I need to get through the door. And I can say, you know, it's like, I think you can feel yourself, class, recognizing that you probably overreact all the time to some kinds of challenges, but maybe I feel uncomfortable in those situations because indeed I'm missing cues that everybody else can pick up on, and nobody else has these anxieties. But I'd say, you know, when we're talking about status and we're talking about the fluidity of it, and it's situational and it's going to change from the role that you have to the other role, bringing in the gendered dimension of this whole dynamic, it's curious that academia has utterly refused to do it. I also have other thoughts about where this is going, but the training we've gone through, you were talking about equality, right? The training that we're being put through to the point where we do not acknowledge the fact of these snakes and ladders in our daily interactions, we should all be behaving equally, is of course most of the time when people are saying that, they want to impose the detention hall version of their dominance on you, right? You can't misbehave, and so I'm going to leap out the door in weird ways because I felt challenged. That the more academia refuses to acknowledge, we'll go to our next picture, the shrew, or he's the tamer, right, for taming of the shrew. Yes. That women and men are going to play out these status interactions differently, and women are not going to do them in the same way men do. It's interesting. It kind of poisons every social interaction we're in.
Yes. Yeah, it does. And if not poisoning, it's an underutilized resource in particular settings where I think people are claiming a quality that shouldn't be there. Okay, so Taming of the Shrew. Lord help
It's a
me.
wonderful selection of examples that we have.
It is for so many reasons.
Proving that all drama is in fact status interactions, but you know, we'll be here all night. We'll be here all night. We're settled. We've settled in. I need another glass of wine.
Yeah, I needed wine. Really, I should have sedated myself for this. So this is a problem. Taming of the Shrew is referenced by a lot of people. Someone has called me a shrew before, and I thought about it, and I thought this was funny because the character of Catherine, Kate, would not exist now. The struggle between the characters in terms of status. So there's Lucentio and his servant Cranio, I think it is, right? And he asks his own servant to don his clothes.
I think we got that one.
So that
this is good.
His
He's
servant
half naked. That's very cool.
Oh yeah. So they're swapping clothing because he wants his servant to pretend to be him, so his servant can bother with his academic studies, and he can run off and pretend to be a scholar and woo a girl who is fallen madly in love with at first sight. So he pretends to be a scholar. So he exchanges his status as the rich master to go off and become the tutor of this girl and then court her.
Bianca.
So his servant. Bianca,
okay.
yeah. So his servant is lapping as him. So that's the first inversion. We have that status exchange. The other one is the problem of Catherine, Bianca's older sister, the shrew herself, who's refusing to concede status to anybody, which is why she's seen as so horrible, because she just refuses all the suitors. She hates them all. She doesn't want to talk to anybody. She's slamming doors. She's screaming, etc. The interesting dynamic with this story is that was written at a time when women were not expected to achieve equality with men. So I was thinking about this as
it's
a problem.
written in a time when they've got a queen, though.
They have a queen, but in terms of, I mean, we weren't talking about someone. Normal people didn't expect to be at that level of leadership.
Well, yeah, normal people don't expect to be king if they're not born king.
No, but now
they can bring enough of an army to kill the previous one. But
yes, but we're in corporate world where you can aspire to be a CEO, and it's like no matter who you are, you can become the CEO one day. So it's this strained, it's a kind of it's a different kind of hierarchy problem. You're born into an aristocratic role in that world,
right?
No one from nobody from the lower classes is going to achieve that. And that would come with a different kind of education also. If you're born into the nobility, if you're a woman who's born into nobility and everyone thinks you're going to be the queen one day, you're trained for it. But the majority of the women in that day wouldn't have been trained for that position. So it's
okay, I think you're making a good point, but
I'm meandering off onto the side.
No. You're getting historically inaccurate, and that's unfortunately my...
Oh God!
Yeah. But no, because what I'm doing is I'm teaching the medieval England class right now, thinking of all the inversions that we have actually in history of overthrow and so forth. But the sort of what you said about education and the exchange of clothes that these characters are doing is so that one can go get his education.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Education messes everything up. But carry on. Because education is the thing that keeps inverting people's status, right? It's like we were talking about the school. We've gone in school. We've gone with the now my foot itches. We've gone with the trading places, whether they had the education. Could you rise with education? we've, worrying about the IQs, we're worrying about, it's like all of this, it's constantly, can you be educated into a higher status? It's a theme right there. And that for women, I mean, that's what we wanted, right? It's like, here we are, we're educated women, we're talking about things we've thought about, and we clearly can think, I hope, unless my IQ is wrong, that education is this thing that keeps messing up the status structures. And I think it messes up women's status structures constantly. I think it did then too. I mean, Elizabeth was not actually, it's interesting, her own education before she became queen, that the court ladies are educated to a fairly high standard in certain things. And, in like theology and things like that as well in that period. So.
Were they educated to a degree that they would be able to step into a leadership position?
It depends.
Like Elizabeth,
it depends on the kind of leadership position we're thinking of, and this is sort of going down in the weeds. It's like what kind of, I think this fits in our category of what skills give people actual status. Socially as opposed to institutionally socially, which is where you've been stuck in the institution that then buttresses up your status, as opposed to an interactional status that you can perform and achieve status in the sort of natural environment of you meet on the street and I can, beat you in a sword fight.
Yeah, so it's Breakfast Club versus Trading Places.
Yes.
One's institutional and one's on the street. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. Well, the shrew in that case, she's in an institution of the family.
Right.
Her status is gained from her family status.
Well, and she's stuck because they need her to get married so Bianca can get married.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the problem with all of the inversion in that story then is upending the institution of the family. I mean, they're trying to hasten Catherine's getting married so that her younger sister can go off and get married.
Right.
And the idea is to trick her into giving up her status as a bachelorette and accepting a proposal and getting married. So this is the problem then of the refusal to exchange status yet again. We're in the same problem. She doesn't want to give up her status.
Okay, now I've tangled it up into 3 different places.
Okay. She's blocking, like she's the block of the entire plot, because we have Lucento and the servant who exchange status in order to get that going, and they're willing to do this. High and low are willing to cross over into each other's status position.
Okay, but there's a difference in that because they're actually okay. We're ending up with an interesting taxonomy of status, which was our goal, but in a way that I hadn't expected. So, what the improv book is showing is how you can act status in a completely indeterminate situation. Right, that there are bodily movements you can make, there are ways that you can hold your head, there are tones of voice you can use, there's movements, and those can be skills simply in a meet a group of people in a neutral, insofar as you can, social moment, like a party. and you can
Mm.
like the game, this is the game, right? If you're picking up women or something, but you're just in a neutral thing, and where you could perform this out, and it will work because of the way human beings interact. But of course, we carry all sorts of other status all the time. Trading places is showing your clothes, right? You carry the way
Yeah.
you dress. If I scrolled back through the pictures, I mean, skin color is meant to be one of those things that people worry about a lot in terms of status, and we actually do. But we're usually adding into it all sorts of other things like, I mean, this also comes out in trading places, the way they talk, whether they can
Mm-hmm.
talk low or talk high, and what status that has.
Yes.
The academic anxiety of terms of testing people and IQ and stuff like that is to put people in their correct status, so that you've tested people for these apparently innate abilities, and you can slot them into the right social place. It's like Brave New World and the alpha
Yes.
gamma beta, the birth roles, which should
Mm-hmm.
therefore make IQ kind of scary, because that means you're being slotted into the Brave New World. How's that?
Well, the idea too is that they're supposed to be permanent categories.
Right.
It's like Gattaca, and they have
Yes.
the godchildren that are genetic, natural genetic children, and the other ones that have been engineered. But it's the idea of having permanently fixed classes and permanently fixed positions.
But we have actually also established that people like to, they like to know what their status is and stick there. This is the interesting thing about social status in the sort of classic sense, is people don't actually like changing it. In fact, one of the things I brainstormed about to use in this stream, but I was thinking about different titles for it. It's snakes and ladders, guys. We're going up and down and up and down. That's all it is. Chaos today, up and down the ladders. Yeah. But one thing I thought about was Bourdieu's distinction, which is a famous sociological study from the 60s, showing different ways that people actually track status. So the term from that became famous was social capital, that you can have social capital, which is different from financial capital. And, the really super wealthy people have one thing that they count status against, but the impoverished intellectuals who go to the avant-garde cinema have a completely other one. And so, and the nouveau riche that don't know how to behave with their money always buy all the tacky stuff, which is what people always accuse Trump of doing, right? Of, he's got all this gold gilded stuff, and that just looks tacky, because if you have old money, you don't do that. And I think
But what happens? Well, but this is the problem then. The anxiety over securing status kills drama, which kills.
Well, the anxiety over refusing to change status, because we recognize that change of status is the most dramatic thing that ever happens to us. You're sort of safe and unthreatened. I mean, this is what was happening constantly in the social media wars. So I was also meditating. Okay, so I'm not sure I finished my taxonomy. That there are like you've been hired for a job that you're actually bad at, but you can't get fired. So you're talking about the janitor looking at the teacher in the Breakfast Club and saying that teacher was not behaving in the way his role was supposed to give him status.
Yes.
And that we consider institutions corrupt when people in the positions of status don't behave in the terms that the role in the institution requires of them. They're not good at that role. right? So do we say we have the fluid state, the
Yeah,
fluid status
they
of
have
social
the title without the
interactions,
function.
the natural status that we think we can slot people into according to different abilities, the the class status that you perform because of who knows what, right? Class status is very interesting. It's hard to the institutional status that people end up being frustrated as why is that person in that position of authority?
Mm.
And then just to finish my the big scale media transformation of social status that we've been thinking about, of how in this new media environment there are statuses developing and being contested constantly, and the biggest ones, like when people who in quote normal social life wouldn't get giant online followings, and that just seems this like that's totally wrong, right? It's like, why should you get so many followers when I'm doing this valuable thing? And how are you achieving this ability to get people to do lots of likes for your stuff? And that the drama that we've been watching play out online over the last several years is these inversions, these constant status changes.
Yes.
I could be Pierre Bourdieu and write a big book about this and make charts. Okay. We still haven't figured out men and women in this one. We'll keep deferring that. How's that for our eternal, not yet promised answers?
Something about that topic is running constantly away into the future. I think I know why. But okay, so social media status changes just like snakes and ladders. Mm-hmm. Instantly. You say the wrong thing and you fall to the bottom of the board again. Status isn't fixed. Status is not fixed on the internet.
Well, the people want it to be stable in the ways that we've been describing. It's like you should be able to behave a certain way, and people know how to respond, which we are learning. In certain sense, you should have the institutional one is, if you have this elite prestige, you should behave in a certain way, or you should be protected against other people's behavior. If you have the external things, like, well, ability is interesting because the social media world is pulling out different kinds of abilities than the athletic world. It's a performative world, so that's why we were thinking about the improv and
yes,
the way in which people behave spontaneously in it.
Well, I always find it really challenging when I how can I describe this? I think the biggest source of argument that I've had in the last little while has been my rejection of equality, where people are, in my perception of things, I can see attempts at trying to make things equal, where I either want a lower status or a higher one, but I don't want equality. In a particular conversation that I had in DCR, this came up, and it was whether or not I should be engaging with men who are having conversations on building up a male hierarchy and talking about creating a patriarchy, and that I should be providing compassion to them for doing this or for their struggle in doing this. And I said, no, I refuse. Don't talk to me about it and don't request compassion. Then I was very very harshly responded to because of my refusal to engage in what I saw was a demand for equality.
I don't think it was compassion's not equality.
No, it was the sense that I was supposed to understand what it was like to form this hierarchy. When I was trying to explain to somebody, I don't know what this is like because I'm not operating in the male hierarchy, so I'm not going to give you empathy for this. I think the main problem that I had in that conversation was that I was being asked to understand something which I couldn't understand. It was an attempt at equality that I didn't.
So I was there watching, and I didn't see it as equality at all. I saw it as you were being expected to play a woman's role in watching the male hierarchy. And this is where, so we got the prince and the pauper now, right? Looking at each other.
Oh, yes.
Mirroring each other, identical twins, right? Which they find out they're both princes, right? So there's no, it's like the equality is there. And it's the accidental social difference, but in fact, the true nobility of character for both of them, or the essence of, that's the point of the prince and the pauper, right? That both of them are in fact princes. And that the one's been living as a pauper was simply separated from his twin, and that therefore they are in fact the same status and they look alike, and they're looking alike shows that they are truly the same status, and that it belongs to the higher one, not the lower. They're both in fact princes, not beggars. Yeah, see, I didn't plan out doing the women's hierarchy thing, and I just had to think, because I was mainly thinking about how the negotiations. It messes up everything, because I think okay, so we're gonna have to test this out at one point. We got they're talking about Buzzsaw Bear saying some women are exceptions to the rule regarding logos over pathos. Male, truly, which is usually hypergamous or a reversal of the case. Mother, Buzzsaw Bear, a mother is more valuable than any job. The degradation or disparagement of that job is criminal. Yeah, I think so. This is, we can't. We were trying to do just the slipperiness of status interactions in this exercise, and figuring out where the women fit in it is another problem altogether. Because I think women do engage in the kind of as we've demonstrated in our practice here, we do engage in the kind of status exchanges that, I mean, Johnston's describing, he's a man, so whether he's describing from his own practice in theater or just, the people, that there are, ways in which we understand, I've done this, and so it lowers status, I've done that, so it raises status. But I do think that men and women's repertoire of exchanges is not identical. And what I saw in that DCR conversation, you felt what you're describing now is you were being asked to be compassionate and therefore equal. I saw it saying you were meant to be a cheerleader.
Okay.
You were meant to be looking at the men's striving for excellence in this particular way, and for you to say, "Go, guys." And they were particular exchange was upsetting because you weren't being the supportive role that was hoped for. You were in fact continuing to engage in the combative role, which was, dude, you're not doing what you think you're doing.
Yeah,
they wanted you out of the game.
I was in pirate mode.
Well, they wanted you out of the interaction, because the claim was you don't belong in deciding what this hierarchical situation means. And you were trying to say it means everything to me, because if men cannot live according to this hierarchy and establish themselves as responsible and protective, I as a woman am doomed, because there's nobody that's going to be able to take care of me when I'm a mother.
Yeah, well, it wasn't just me individually.
No, you were arguing it for women, the sort of in our social relationships, that regardless of what we're doing in these finely tuned social interactions, there's a bigger problem of how can human society function if the sexes aren't playing their particular roles.
Yes.
Which the pirate story messes up, because it's like, oh, that's great, you know, Elizabeth is going to be able to fight with them on. She's less of a Mary Sue than, oh, I don't know, Rey or whatever that character is in the Star Wars, where, you know, picks up a sword and can suddenly beat all the men and her brother. I hated that. I've never seen any Star Wars since that. It was so lame and pathetic. Right? We don't actually like when these hierarchies are completely messed up in those terms.
No. I'm just thinking about the problem of a fixed hierarchy that's immovable, because that's a different problem then. If there are no snakes and no ladders, then there's no movement.
Well, so I think we're now to the Bugs Bunny part.
Oh yeah.
Okay, think about what you're wrestling with.
Well, there's a slapstick comedy.
Right, but we're life and joy and silliness and the comedy, and
yes,
and Bugs is dressed as a hunter and Elmer is dressed as a rabbit for reasons that I don't know, right? But the absolute, you know, the hunter is now the hunted and the rabbits outwitted the hunter. But it's funny, and we like that, and we like the feeling of release in the inversion.
Yes. There's release, like there's a comedic release of tension. And I think this is where I didn't like being put in the cheerleader role, circling back to that, because it links to this. Because if I get taken out of if it's like getting taken out of the comedy of it, you know, because if you're told don't be Bugs Bunny and don't be Elmer Fudd, just stand on the sideline and cheer them both, then there's no involvement in the comedy. So it's
yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like then you're not involved in the inversion anymore. You're passively watching the inversion and you're not involved in the comedy, and it's kind of like
we have found it. We found the problem for the women and men. This is it. Great. We came at it from another direction, and there it is. No.
Thanks, Looney Tunes.
With the Looney Tunes. That's it. Because, no, just like you perfectly described it, because one, this is a little bit behind the scenes, but it was really fun in writing tonight, right? And I was teasing you a lot because like we needed to get the energy right for tonight. And the sort of banter of the creative troupe, which I think is why I started with the improv stuff sounds so much fun, and it is fun. It's fun being able to go. He goes through in the, status. The fundamental rule of improv is yes and, right? So we're here, with Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd, and they're reporting on the day that they met each other and switched roles. And if you say, something that just blocks that, nothing goes anywhere, right? Whereas if you say, Bugs, what do you think about that? You sort of get into the scene and accept the premise of the silliness and talk about it, that there is, that this is this kind of status exchange, this sort of joy of the fall and the actual game is, we've had long conversations about what where the recess at Bellum is, where's the joy and the laughter in the fight that we're in, and the ability to stay joyful, and the ability to it's in, as you and I have often talked, it's in these status inversions that we're able to say, I don't need to hold the status of the one that always had the answer. I can learn from you because you have an answer that I didn't know. I don't need to stay permanently in the status interaction of the one being in control of the room because so-and-so is acting up, but I can play with you for a little bit. I mean, it's like moms, so we're Buzzsaw Bear is, well, Buzzsaw Bear and Mel are talking about skiing. That And our chat is playing along with us and yet not listening to us necessarily. Mel says 100% only. I don't think they're talking to us. That, you know, moms with their children are having to play a lot of status inversions too, because you need to take care of the child and be protective of it, but also be playful, right? And that what women want when they're seeing men play, I can say this, is we want to be part of that playing. So I want to be a fencer, I want to be in the game, but I can't quite play the way they do.
Yes. Yeah, that's fair to say.
And women often have a difficulty with the kind of status inversions that men are comfortable with in their play. There, we said it. Only took us 2 hours and 12 minutes to get to it. That thing you do not say.
Never mentioned that.
Never mentioned that thing. Well, no, but this is actually what I've meditated on this a lot in my fencing and the maybe not so much in the fencing. I did this in the Lobster Side cartoon that I did about men and women's games, when the toys are playing and the women come in and wreck the game. And it's the men's game in the game. I mean, even in Trading Places, right? They have to be willing to lose. It's what you were describing about the risk of the floor, and it needs to be fun, and it needs to, it's like you're there, you're actually risking something real. You may lose everything. The pirates, they may lose their ship, they may lose everything. Jack loses his ship again. That the men's game and again. And the men's game set up situations where real loss in the game can happen. And women, and I will say this bluntly, and therefore, in academia, we don't like getting bad grades. We don't want to be in a situation where we can actually fail. So we tend to set up things, maybe we're nest building, right? We don't want the risk, right? You don't want to have the risk of everything falling apart. And so I can't risk that. We're conservative in those senses because we want to make sure everything's actually contained and taken care of and no risk, which is why the trope of a Karen or something is the kindergarten teacher. Make sure that there's absolutely no risk for anybody.
Or very low risk. It has to be minimal. It's to be kind of like, it's safe. There's always a margin, but it's very, very small margin.
Right, but men want the snakes and ladders, or at least they should, and that they're not going to get to magnificent excellence without a real risk. And those of us who like seeing men succeed want them to take it.
Yes. Yeah, which is what I was trying to explain. I don't want to be on the side watching a game and saying, "Oh, how horrible. You landed on a snake. Tut tut." I was like, enjoy it, and trying to maintain the playfulness of the whole thing. But even I forget sometimes that I've outed myself as female, and it affects I do. And it affects how what I'm saying is perceived. And I always forget it.
Right, but I think so on the opposite side, you're saying women sabotage these games constantly. Typically.
In which ways?
Well, I don't see you sabotaging them, so that's not. But we want equality. We want to play your games, and the men say that's great. Come play our game, and then something happens in the situation which the women feel like it's like I don't want to go there because it's just I just ran into all sorts of. But wait, I played the game right. Why can't I win? Cry. Right. That our impulses to be in the game don't match theirs exactly, and we sabotage them. I think we somehow do sabotage them. I mean, I certainly see the sabotage constantly in the internet stuff, which is what. Okay, so I was actually explaining to a friend in the dog park, Gamergate. Remember Gamergate? Anybody in the room old enough to remember
Ancient
Gamergate?
history.
The ancient history that in fact brought all of these actors together, right? It's how Milo met Vox.
Yes.
It's how I don't know whether Owen was involved in Gamergate, right? But you know, the reason that all of the guys, when Milo was doing his campus tour, were there in the college audiences saying thank you, thank you, thank you, is because the gamers had felt like the women who were sleeping with the journalists who then wrote good reviews of their terrible games were cheating. And the gamers were frustrated because they're saying, no, stop cheating. You don't get good reviews for a crappy game. You should have to go through it at the same level we do, which is do a good game and then you get a good review and then it's real. Whereas the way in which you've brought your sexual politics into this review situation is you've corrupted the entire system, because now we can't trust the journalism.
Yes.
And you know that has I mean we should go to Johnny Depp and his, you know, every time the men come in, marry someone and then give her favors because they're associated with her, people get upset. It happened in medieval courts, it happened in the Reformation. You know, it's and that's why with Elizabeth in power, she couldn't get married because that would switch things up. But it meant that she kept all of them trying to give her favors, I suppose. I'm not sure what you do with a woman in power. It's complicated. Actually, we could think about that. We could do women in power for another episode.
Yes.
See our glee, the glee of the thought of the bringing the high status down for him. There is no sympathy. Oh no, I have no idea. Why would I do that? So I think.
Well, I was thinking more in the sense that when the girls are wrecking the game, what they're doing is they're undoing the attempt of that costume swap in order to have those like status inversions.
Yes,
women are highly uncomfortable with sudden changes in status and the inversions of these roles because we look to established hierarchies to establish our own identities. Unpopular opinion, but it's true.
And now, okay, now I'm showing a close-up of when the Snakes and Ladder game, and you have zeroed in on exactly the problem. Carry on. The magic's working finally.
Oh, thank God. We look to established hierarchies to create our own identities. Women can't do it independently like men do. So in this Taming of the Shrews story, we have the men quite comfortable inverting themselves, inverting their status, exchanging their status, going from high to low and low to high because of the end goal, which is the mission of marry the shrew off. All right, free up Bianca, then get the master to marry Bianca. So it's gaming. There's an explicit mission, and they're all happy to strategically change status and invert their status in order to get the outcome that they want. Women don't play like that.
What do we do?
Many things. Well, if I keep it within the story frames that we've used so far, there's not slapstick, there's seduction involved in the way that we play games.
Yes. See,
I feel odd saying we when I'm saying this out loud, because when Pigeon becomes Peacock, I go into male mode. That's a male peacock. That's not a hen. Right. It's a cock. But it's slapstick, so it's comedic. It's not seductive. And good gaming is slapstick.
Yeah.
And that's why Gamergate happened. They were angry because suddenly seduction had been introduced into a slapstick environment.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, so the slapstick is the acceptance of a game where you can be embarrassed, but the like sports, right? I think the women have horribly corrupted men's sports, with therefore the jokes about how the men are taking over women's sports are I did actually do a blog post some time ago about Title IX called Boys with Tits, because women getting into collegiate sports was in fact wanting to turn them into men because they were mainly playing men's sports. So there's that problem, but it's hard for women to be in that sport environment and not flip it into the seduction. I think, for real. But the seduction, not just in the sexual thing, but winning other people over to love you by way of your, yeah. I'm not good at it. Am I? I don't know. This is like funny. If you're really good at it, are you actually aware of being good at it? What I would...
I'm not, it's like it doesn't necessarily even have to be conscious, right? It doesn't have to be a conscious awareness of this dynamic. See, I think tomboys understand somehow, speaking of the peacock thing, but the tomboy anomaly is that these are girls that do not want to play the seduction element. They want to play slapstick. Tomboys are delaying their entrance into the world of seduction, not just sexual, but in terms of having that kind of game. They still want to play with the boys like boys.
Right.
They invert. That's why they're clownish.
So what lessons do we learn from all of this about ladders? And climbing them.
Well,
you said some things when I first suggested this topic to you. You said, that's great. We'll talk about snakes and ladders.
The actual game.
No, not the game. The metaphors, the meaning, the symbols. So it's interesting. To find the pictures that is going to be on the cover for this episode, I actually looked at Wikipedia, and learned that Snakes and Ladders is in fact originally an Indian game, not a British game. I thought it was British. The British pick it up from India in the 19th century.
I think it's funny that the British picked it up from India and then they re-imported the British version into India, and the Indians stopped playing the original version of the game. They started playing the British version of the game because it was originally a religious game. It was supposed to teach the cause and effect and karmic consequences of human virtue and vice. It's called mokshapatam in one of the Indian languages. So they had it was a kind of religious experience of playing this game and teaching people if the virtues would allow them to ascend quickly into a higher state of spiritual existence, and then the vice would
swoosh them down.
Send them all the way down to the bottom very quickly. Painfully true. And so to kind of train the players in virtue. So we have the same images in the Christian world, which I put into the slideshow there. The ladder of divine ascent, and then our serpents in the scriptures. The Christian imagery of the serpent, and what the serpent meant for mankind, it was very similar. We have a lot of ladders in the Bible and a lot of serpents in the Bible, so I wanted to get them linked into the theme of status exchange and what that means in a Christian way.
So I think some people may worry that assuming high status is always unchristian. That I, in directing our conversation by making sure that I sit still and don't touch my face, am being unchristian.
No.
This needs to be marked. No, because this also comes up a lot in the chat world of, if I am saying either in, Mother Abbess role in my own chat saying you can't do that, you're not behaving, is that unchristian? Well, obviously no, because I'm maintaining order, right? But the fear of all holding higher status as therefore necessarily prideful status, or like Luciferian, you're saying you're trying to take God's role. We need to erase that quickly, I think. How do we do that?
Oh, well, that's the same. Well, it's the same. It's the same criticism that people have of the church patriarchy,
mm-hmm.
to say, oh, well, why do you need a priest when you can just be a Christian? You don't need to have a priest. Right. So it's a very similar problem.
This gamma problem again, challenging the priest, because, well, and the priests, it's interesting, the priests are there because they've been consecrated. They're in this institutional role. We do expect them to behave in accordance with that institutional role. But we also expect to need that institutional role, because otherwise who's going to be guiding the ceremonies? Who's going to be guiding the rituals for us?
Well, they're necessary in order for us to receive the Eucharist.
Yeah.
They have to perform their role for us to have Holy Communion. So they're very, very necessary. Because, you or I can't lady priest our way to a Eucharist, can we? That was the Centrism Games reference for anyone listening.
Bicentrism Games, it's a good story. We should talk about that too. Just like I demonstrated at the beginning with, somebody does need to be responsible for guiding. And I think with the male priesthood, I approve, absolutely. Women should not be priests, are able to assume that role without doing the kinds of seduction roles that women do when we take on roles, right? I think as a teacher, I get to, be in the encouraging, motherly, compassionate role that is okay for women. But I don't see that the liturgical role that the men assume with that hierarchy is ours. I don't think we belong in it. I think that's appropriate. We've seen how how the lady priest disrupt it, and we wrote about it too. and there's something about the good things of women turn in that kind of hierarchical position go foul, very definitely.
Well, it has to be regulated. It has to be regulated. Because otherwise everything becomes a popularity contest instead of a proficiency contest. Because women don't care about proficiency. They care about popularity.
Yes.
So we're back in the Breakfast Club.
Back in the Breakfast Club.
Where we've got the issue of Molly, what's her face? I always forget the actresses' names and the actors' names. So we've got. I
think I do that. Know that one. Ringwald. That's Molly Ringwald. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. Molly Ringwald. So the pretty rich popular girl. So she's clinging onto that status, and you see during the film she's terrified of losing it, even though she's very unhappy. She's quite miserable as she's kind of discussing her family life and her relationship with her parents, her relationship with her friends, and then the bad boy Judd Nelson and the jock and the nerd, they've all kind of ganged up on her at one stage, and they're saying, you're surrounded by people you don't really like, you're just terrified of being cast out of the group. You're terrified of being disintegrated in this particular herd that you're comfortable with and whatever, and you're miserable though, but you won't give it up. So you see how that is the weapon that is used against women, how women use that against each other, which is, you can't have snakes and ladders in that environment, because if everything's a popularity contest, you're not going to take risks because you can't risk being unpopular.
Right.
Whereas men are taking risks to be unpopular in order to get somewhere, get to the end. The Taming of the Shrew drama hinges on their willingness to take risks and to be unpopular in order to maneuver all of the characters around them. Because Petruchio, the one who ends up marrying Lady Catherine the Shrew, he's very unpopular. She doesn't like him. She doesn't even like him after they get married. He is the star of that story because of his willingness to be unpopular and to risk being hated in order to do what is necessary.
Man, you've unpacked it. That's definitely it.
I have to go.
You did it. You did it. I've got you. No, I've got the image that you have of the people falling off the ladder too. And
oh yeah.
Yes, I mean this is so much for myself. I've gotten the masculine, hopefully, willingness to take risks in terms of skill and being embarrassed at not being able to do this, that, or the other. But the popularity one, man, you're describing that, and I mean, high school. It was interesting the way you were describing high school as artificial, and I think it's almost experimental, and it's stripped down purity of test of those sorts of social interactions. And women have to be popular. We're
taking me back to the dark time.
It's so hard not to be the popular one. And that risk, what you're describing with those characters, yeah, we're still going. My family can't believe it.
Yeah, well,
I want to be the popular one. We've still got people watching after hours. We're the popular ones tonight.
Molly Ringwald, we've achieved Molly Ringwald status. Well, the other girl, the weirdo kleptomaniac, she has a difficulty with the attention. That at the end of the film, she ends up hooking up with the job, which is quite a surprising thing. It's quite funny actually. Molly Ringwald just rubs off her makeup and then puts lip gloss on, and suddenly she's, oh, you're gorgeous. Like, we had no idea. It's like,
yeah, really, get over it.
Was it that hard to see? But there's a shift. Suddenly she's getting attention and she's having to manage the attention. Now this is the other thing with the problem, the female influence in the game, because the Taming of the Shrew is not just about getting this crazy lady under control. It's not that. First of all, Petruchio, her husband, has risked everything in order to achieve the mission that he's been asked to do with the other suitor who wants to marry Bianca, the younger sister. Right. So the boys are all in this coordinated conspiracy to do what they need to do. But you see the outcome of the interactions in the female hierarchy shift very dramatically too. There's a snakes and ladders kind of experience with Bianca and her older sister Catherine. Catherine starts out being this repulsive, loud, brash, opinionated, antisocial person, and she goes through a process of beginning to understand what the men are doing. She has, throughout the story, developed a true compassion for the men. She's not interfering in their world, but when it comes to the closing scene and she's looking at her husband, and there's a bit of awkwardness because they don't have a baby yet, and they're not They haven't kind of sealed the deal in terms of their marriage dynamic. And then the men make the bet, the trading places moment, where everyone says, okay, we're going to play a game now. We're going to bet which of our wives
will come.
is the most
Yes.
virtuous.
Yes.
Yes. And then they all, so the men are gaming once again. They're betting on the virtue of their wives. And so they're saying, oh, of course I have the best wife. She's going to come immediately. Everyone's bragging. And none of them do. Because the women are all stuck in the popularity contest situation of, oh, we don't want to look like we're following orders, and we don't want to look like we're doing whatever our husband's saying. They get into this kind of self-policing herd mentality where, oh, we can't break rank. We don't want to be the wrong one. We don't want to be the woman who breaks rank here. And they keep sending servants back to tell the husbands, no, we're not coming.
Right,
She's
right.
not coming. And then Petruchio says, call Catherine, and she comes. And not only does she arrive,
she gives the speech.
She's dragging the other women with her, and then she gives that magnificent speech at the end because she actually has a comprehension of the dynamic of the game, that she's not playing, but she sees the rules. She understands the rules. So yeah, I'll leave it there.
So we have another super chat from Buzzsaw Bear saying, "Let me ask the professor." Although I'm thinking maybe you can answer this better. Let me ask the professor about this. Are women by nature communist? No, I don't think so. Not in those terms. It takes a great deal of effort to get women to behave in a communist fashion. For example, in a monastery.
Well, are women communist? Are women natural communists? Let me think. What woman will deliberately... What woman is going to refuse a diamond ring or will deliberately reject a diamond ring to lower her status? I think that would be my answer to that.
I think
women wear status.
Women. I mean, women given their opportunity will protect their own children.
Yes.
Takes a lot to disabuse them of that impulse, and they will protect their own interests.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
Buzzsaw Bear, hopefully I don't get graded on punctuation. Oh, I grade everybody. So now I'm wondering, it's like, do we actually have a problem? I mean, human beings are supposed to have Tar Baby. Their voting record shows the tendency. Well, so what they're voting for is to make everything their own house, their own household. Right. I don't think they're voting communist. I think they're voting domestically, and of course we've made the entire public sphere into their own homes, and so they're behaving as if they're taking care of their own property and their own families, but generically I think it's a perversion of women's... Excuse me, I'm dying. I think it's a perversion of their desire to take care of their own families and their own flock of children. And when they don't have them, they turn everybody else into proxies, not just their cats. Yeah. So we have our own snakes and ladders of virtue, and here we go. Here's the snake in the apple that we're usually dealing with. Now I'm wondering whether we got to this place from a different direction than I thought we would, which is good. Appropriate. The snakes and ladders of this conversation. At what point have we been dealing with sin, and at what point have we been dealing with the way we behave best together? Because some we were talking about the status exchange of play and games and conversation and sex, but we haven't got to that because I don't think men and women's conversation in those terms is identical. That just the sort of social playfulness and joy and creativity that none of that's the switching of status there is good and fruitful.
Mm-hmm.
So where do we end up with the Christian snake of, oh wait, now here we have one of Vinkit, the the snake of Christ.
Ah, yes. Um, the serpent in the garden proposed a cheat code to knowledge and to equality with God.
Mm.
Which is kind of like the original inversion, the original offer of inversion. So instead of, having the knowledge of good and evil, you won't die, you'll be like God, your eyes will be opened. That sounds like the ladder of divine ascent, only it's a snake that's offering it to you. You have this, like, that's the trick.
Mm. Well, I suppose you say it that way. You say it's the trick. We have a snake at the end here. It's the trick of saying you're not going to. Well, one that we talked about this at the beginning. The Lucifer wanting to have the place in the hierarchy that seems to be in control, but is not recognizing what it means to be a creature.
Mm.
And the sort of fighting against, I mean, I guess that the sort of fighting against the naturalness of being in relation. I think, I mean, what the serpent promises them, you won't be subject to any of this anymore. You will not die. You will not slip down the ladder. You will not trade status. You will not. I mean, it isn't now. We've talked this all through. It's like it is a kind of the social death of stasis, absolute stasis, which is why we find it so frustrating. It's like you won't play with us. You won't. I mean, this, okay, so, and I did think about this. Now I've got back around to where I find some of the online interactions frustrating, but these are real life ones too. When I have made a gesture to you, and it's often women that have this difficulty, the men are responding to me differently. I realize they're responding courteously rather than hierarchically, but, I've made a gesture of, I will lower my status now so that you can teach me something, or one, right? Or, to a woman, I've said this thing. If you laugh, then you let me have high status for a bit, right? My joke was funny. And there are situations we get in online, but also in real life, that it's like there's an absolute refusal to make that exchange, right? I'm going to be stuck in exactly the high status, and I'm never going to let you exchange with me. And from my, the impersonal you there, the French one, right? That my frustration with that is now I can't be friends. I don't know how to be friends with someone who won't allow that back and forth.
Mm.
So instead, I end up getting accused of only wanting high status, and I'm like, I want you sometimes to play with me and acknowledge that I made a funny, right? That was funny. We're going to laugh now. Isn't, and vice versa, right? And
you want a game.
I want a game. I want to actually be in the game, and with the recognition that I don't like losing, and you have to cope with your own sense of shame and humiliation at not being able to play the game and win and stuff like that. But the frustration of the refusal to play the game is yeah, so I sort of played with how I was going to do our opening little thing, and the thing I was thinking of this morning was I'll be angry, right? That you won't play, why won't you play with me? That makes me really upset. And that is the feeling. It's like when someone's not going to ever allow you to have high status, it's just like, oh, come on. And certainly I have had experience in academia where someone just will not exchange.
Mm.
they won't let me have a knowledge, and they won't, and I'm willing to let them have the knowledge and asking questions, but it doesn't get reciprocated, and then you get stuck, and it feels frustrating and sad. Is that me being, prideful, or is that me wanting to play?
It sounds like playfulness.
I think so. but recognizing that's a sort of where the stuck is, right? Where you end up in feeling of sinfulness and frustration and anger and all of those, snaky feelings of, but where's the game? Where's the play? Where is the we both get to be high status and we both get to be low? What's missing if one can't have that?
Intimacy.
True. And friendship. But what I was thinking is, why under what circumstances are people incapable of doing it? And we've said in the male social sexual hierarchy, the way Vox talks about it, the gammas just won't, right? They always have to win. So we've watched, for example, Scott Adams on his Twitter, I think finally coming around to admitting that he shouldn't have been vaxxed, but just desperately trying not to have been wrong, right? Whereas you say, oh, my bad. Whoops. Really. So the sort of the sin in this context seems to feel like that absolute rigidity of status, and paradoxically, therefore, sin isn't so much pride as not taking the lower seat when you're asked. No, that seems wrong. Maybe our chat's helping us. Here we go.
Yeah, hopefully.
Loltar baby. No, buzzsaw bear. I think the voting is more a product of brainwashing institutes of education, but conformity is a product of the feminine for the most part, in my opinion. Not exclusive to women, but more so. See, I think we're thinking we have floated the ideas that women care about the popularity and find it hard to play these status games, which translates into social situations as different kinds of behaviors from the men. And the feeling of stuckness and frustration that we as women who do actually like playing games, but I also have to watch myself when there's places where I just stick and I'm like, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to lower my status in this particular moment because it's wrong. Or, it's like I'm not necessarily going to go in all of those situations, and maybe it isn't wrong. Maybe the sort of judgment calls that we have to learn to make is something else we need to talk about. I forget whether I had another picture after the snake. Oh yeah, we do.
Well, COVID was like the abandonment of status, and you're describing sin, and you're saying inability to go low or to acknowledge that somebody else has a higher status than you.
Right.
I just keep getting this image in my mind of the world with masks on, but they're all the same masks, so everyone looks the same, and then no one's taking the mask off, and nobody knows who's in charge. Nobody knows, it's total equality and sameness world. Yeah. With that's what it looks like to me. That's what sin looks like. The outcome of it. There's no playfulness. There was no playfulness. There's no game, It's how can I avoid the unpopularity of being the unmasked one in this environment, this room, this street, this particular place? Because at all costs, my survival relies on not appearing like I'm breaking the rule. Yeah.
Baby, we're at war. I don't have time to sweet talk you through the revelation. Oh, I think having achieved a near, well, not as long as we did the last one, but nearly. We cannot make 3 hour. We cannot make 3 hour ones our norm, but clearly these are
No. This was a
these
special,
are special ones. Okay, well, I think it's
limited edition release.
we keep going, right? Okay, so Buzzsaw Bear and Tar Baby are Tar Baby. I have a hard time differentiating between status and popularity. Buzzsaw Bear. I dated a manager of mine and we had a great relationship. I was still the man even though I did most of the cooking. Still Buzzsaw Bear. When I was in my mid-20s, I left 35. Well, I'm not sure this is relevant to our conversation. Well done, losing so much weight. I think the difference between status and popularity is perhaps something we need to further unpack. But what we wanted to talk about was this feeling of the game and the playfulness and the what do we learn from the snakes and ladders in the status interactions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think
the revelation.
We're back at me looking at myself on Facebook when the other person's talking. which means we took you on the journey that we'd promised ourselves we'd try. And we'll just have to say, to be continued. Yeah. Oh, good. Okay. There will be more on the Mosaic Ark. Please subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube so that you can join the unauthorized chat and ask us questions that we'll actually answer on stream rather than just in comments and YouTube. We will return. To be continued. Thank you for joining us.